when I started teaching almost 2 decades ago, I, not surprisingly, taught the way I had been taught. Mostly lecture with a little discussion sprinkled in. Over the years, I experimented with a lot of different strategies. And after reading the education literature on the benefits of collaborative learning strategies, I decided to experiment with the use of student teams. Now I happily place all of my students in permanent student study teams at the beginning of every semester. Now, what I do with my students and how I do it and why I do it, if you're interested, feel free to talk with me after the session. But as I'm sure most of you know, group work doesn't always work. In fact, it takes a lot of work to get group work to work. And I think the biggest problem, and probably the reason why John hasn't talked to a student in 30 years that wanted to do more group work, is what I call the freerider problem. The strongest student does all or most of the work. It's in the interest of the strongest student to do all or most of the work. It's in the interest of the other students to let the strongest student do all or most of the work. That's a problem. But don't give up on group work, because there's a way to deal with it. The trick is that instructors need to design group or team projects that create positive interdependence among the members of the team or group. Now, that's not so easy to do. Positive interdependence has 3 key features. First one, each student's success must depend on their team's success. That's not hard to create. Just some part of their grade being a team grade can do that. It's the second part that's harder to create, and it gets at this freerider problem. That is that each student's performance has to significantly impact the success of the team. And then there's a third component, too, that's often missed. And that is the students actually have to work together. They have to collaborate in order to succeed as a team. It's not good enough just to give a project and the students divide it up and each student does their thing, they slap it all together at the end, they turn it in as a team project. Well, it's not. It's really a collection of individual projects. They're not learning from each other and working with each other. So it turns out to be quite a challenge to develop strategies that incorporate those 3 features. One that I created years back that I really like, that I use every semester before filing exams, is what I call my exam bowl competition. And I've got a handout on that for those who are interested. Some other instructors at other disciplines have adopted their own versions of my exam bowl. You can read it yourself, but in short, what I do is I develop a list of thought-provoking questions which I ask of my various teams during exam bowl competition day. The trick is, when I ask a team a question, they can't pick the spokesperson. I pick the spokesperson randomly, okay? And their teammates cannot help the spokesperson during the competition. So that means that the teammates have to help each other, teach each other everything they know before the competition. The student may know all the answers but still lose because that student may never be called on. So they have an incentive to teach the rest of their students on their team everything that they know. And so this creates that positive interdependence, and I've run this for many semesters, and I'm very happy with it. But it does take a whole class period, and I've only been doing it before the final exam. So last semester, I wanted to develop some new strategies that create this positive interdependence and get students teaching each other that I could use earlier in the semester, maybe before my first and second exams. And so this is what I came up with. Before the first exam, I came up with this idea. Teams could earn bonuses if they had the highest, lowest team member score. So teams that had on their team the highest, lowest score on the first exam will get bonus points to be added to their first exam score. So that means students had incentive to help their teammates, to teach their teammates everything they know, because if one teammate failed, the whole team would fail. And this would also be a DFW reduction strategy too, because most of the effort is focused on students who may be struggling. Did it work? Well, I think so, but the jury's still out. I didn't require all students in this class to participate. Most did. Of those that did, there were 16 of them did, 7 did not. They scored substantially higher than the students that did not participate. It's 8.5 points higher on the exam. But that could have been the result of selection bias. It could be the students that didn't participate are just not as motivated. They wouldn't have done as well anyway. Don't know. I also set up a control class. This was an 11 a.m. class. I also had a 12:30 class that I did not. I gave the same exam, but did not do this challenge. And they did almost as well as the participating students in the 11 a.m. class. But I learned later that those students were stronger on other assignments as well, so I'm not sure that was a fair comparison. But one thing I did, in addition to running the exercises, is I surveyed my students after they had taken their tests. And I was very surprised that 16 out of 16 students, every student that participated, said that they enjoyed the process, they liked the team exercise of trying to achieve a goal, that they at least thought that they learned something from the experience, and that they were ready for any more challenges I could throw at them. So, before the second test, I threw something else at them. This one was based on improvement. So the idea here is teams would get a bonus only if every member of the team scored at least as high on the second test as they scored on the first test. Again, this incentivizes students to help their teammates, to teach them what they know, because every teammate had to succeed in order for any student to get a bonus. Did it work? Well, I really think this one sure did. My second tests tend to be more difficult than my first test. Nevertheless, in this class, 11 students scored higher on the second test, and only 5 scored lower. Contrast that with the 12:30 class where I didn't do this challenge, and the result was just the opposite. Yeah. Only 4 students did better, 11 did worse. And so this is pretty good evidence that this type of strategy increases interest in performance. Conclusions? Well, I think that I've provided some evidence that these kinds of assignments that generate positive interdependence incentivize students to teach each other what they know, to help each other, to help motivate each other, and I think generate more learning. But this is a small sample size, right? Only one semester. I'd like to run this for several semesters before I draw any conclusions about the academic effectiveness of these strategies. Though I was particularly impressed by the finding that students seem to really enjoy the challenge of attempting to achieve a goal as a team, much like college sports teams do. And it was also notable that they all at least think they learned something from the experience. And I think they did too. Thanks.